Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about marijuana. Can Christians smoke marijuana to the glory of God? It's a complicated subject. It's something that we haven't had to deal with very much because for a long time, the law told us, the law of the land, your country, wherever you're at in the world, most likely just a few years ago, it was illegal to smoke pot. And the Bible's very clear that we should respect the government and obey the law that our country has. Now, that's changing. What do we do now that in a lot of places around the world that it is totally legal and fine according to the government to smoke pot? So what do we do? Well, I think the Bible gives us a lot of wisdom on this topic, although it doesn't necessarily say marijuana. It doesn't have THC. You're not going to be able to find that in the original Hebrew or Greek. And for those of you who jump to Genesis 1, you're talking about like how every green herb was given to us. It's not about that. All right. You're not going to eat marijuana. You're going to try to smoke it. And so it's totally different. But there are some biblical principles that we can take to this, because whenever we come to something that the Bible doesn't specifically say in black and white and sometimes red that you should or shouldn't do this thing, we call that a gray matter. And we look at the Bible and we try to apply the most related kind of topic to our situation and ask ourselves whether it would be wise to partake or do something. We do this with movies and music and dancing and a lot of other things that the New Testament and doesn't really talk about too much. But one of those things that we do that with is also alcohol. Now, if you're coming into this conversation, you're already of the mindset that, a Christian can never partake in alcohol to the glory of God, regardless of what Paul tells us in Romans of the weaker and the stronger brother. If that's your position, then you're going to come into this conversation already with the presupposition that you can't smoke pot ever. So you might as well turn off this video. But if you're of the mindset that a Christian can partake in alcohol to the glory of God, or that some Christians do, maybe not yourself, but others that they do it, then we can begin to actually have a conversation about this and look at some biblical principles. Now, the best place to go to in this conversation, I think, is in Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians 5, verse 18 says, "And don't get drunk with wine, which leads to reckless living, but be filled by the Spirit." So Paul is saying here that the reason why drinking alcohol is such a danger, and when specifically getting drunk is like the end goal of that drinking, then the reason why it's a sin to get drunk is because you can't be filled with the Holy Spirit. So if you're coming into this conversation about marijuana and you're just wanting to get high and you're wondering whether a Christian can get high or not, well, I think the Bible is actually very clear on that topic, that smoking marijuana in that case would be a sin, because you cannot yield yourself to the Holy Spirit when you've already yielded yourself to another substance. And that's why getting drunk is such a wrong thing, because you cannot yield yourself to the Holy Spirit. You can't fulfill those commands and live righteously and self-controlled in that way. So that's number one. So if you are smoking pot to get high, I would say that no, you cannot do that as a Christian. You should not do that as a Christian. It would be considered a sin then. But what about, that point, if we look at it as like, there's one point over here that is, getting high. And once you get past that point, then it's very clearly sin. What about, is there any time before then? As soon as you light it up and you start smoking, is there a point between these two things where you can be okay, where you can be safe as a Christian and still smoke pot? Now, there are a few things that I want to discuss with it because it's a big conversation. I'm trying to make this video pretty short. I would say if there's something like with alcohol, you could say, well, like alcohol is a danger then. If getting drunk is wrong, there's tons of Christians that look at it and say, well, you shouldn't partake in anything because of the danger. But then there's also a lot of Christians who do drink alcohol. They like the taste of it. They enjoy it. They're enjoying God's creation, God's good creation when they're partaking in alcohol, and they're not getting to that point when they're drunk. Can you do that with marijuana? Can you enjoy it to that point and say, well, I'm never going to go past that point of actually getting high? Well, I would say that there's a lot of differences. That's where this correlation between alcohol and marijuana begin to break down, because alcohol is a little bit different. You can, if you're a big guy like me, you can have a beer and it's not going to affect you, at least your decision-making skills, in any way. Now, depending on your size and all of that, it might be a little bit different for you. But marijuana, on the other hand, it soothes the user almost immediately. It starts affecting them. It is not the same thing as drinking alcohol where you can start it and really there's like a point where it begins to actually affect your decision-making skills, and you start to get buzzed and then leading to that point of getting drunk. Marijuana is different. It begins to kind of go on this downward slope toward being high, or maybe it should be an upward slope toward getting high right off the bat. So I don't think that you can take some of the principles like enjoying it, like the taste of it. I don't think that pretty much anybody, maybe if you do, and you let me know in the comments section here and we can have a conversation about it. But if anyone out there smokes pot because they like the taste of it, I would be very surprised. Or maybe like the smell of it. They love the smell of it, and that's why I would be very surprised. That would be very different than alcohol. A lot of people enjoy alcohol because of the taste. But then also, it begins to affect you right away. And that's a big concern because we are supposed to yield ourselves to the Holy Spirit. So there are a few other things that I want to talk about, a few other things I think we need to ask. And the biggest thing is asking why. Why would you smoke pot? If you know you can't get high, and you know that it's not necessarily about the taste. I'm just taking that as a presupposition, okay? That it's not necessarily about the taste or the enjoyment of it. Then why would you? Well, there are a few reasons that people have given me when I was a youth pastor, especially, and having conversations with people. Well, because it makes them feel good. Well, already we're talking about, that kind of influence that a substance can have over someone. And when you're doing that, then you're already talking about having been affected by it. But even if you look at these things and you're like, well, I do it because I want to feel good, or I do it because I want to escape my reality, my trouble in some way, I would say that is very concerning if you're looking to a substance and you're trying to get something out of that substance. Because especially when it comes to escaping your reality, what does that mean for sacrificing and really going through hardships to the glory of God? Like, we are called as Christians to suffer for the glory of God. If we're running to a substance to soothe our emotional pain, our circumstances, to kind of just escape, that's actually what we're supposed to do with Jesus. He is the way of escape. That's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians, that nothing has overtaken us that is common for man. But the way of escape, that's Jesus. That's not marijuana. That's not pot. And if you're looking for it to just kind of feel good, I would say that there are many other things in the Christian life that you can do to feel good that isn't going to have an effect on your mind or soothe you into a state where you cannot yield yourself to the Holy Spirit. So those are just some of the things I think we should consider. Now, there is another passage that I think is important when we talk about this as well, and this is in 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 6. So then, let us not sleep like the rest, but let us stay awake and be self-controlled. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be self-controlled and put on the armor of faith and love and a helmet of the hope of salvation. So, as Christians, We are to be self-controlled because we are children of the day, that we should be aware of what's going on. And you need to ask yourself, if you're a Christian and you're wondering about whether you can smoke pot to the glory of God, can you do that and be self-controlled at the same time? Can you yield yourself to the Holy Spirit at the same time? Are you using it as a crutch when you should be relying on Jesus? Those are some of the questions. Now, when it comes to medical marijuana, that's a totally different conversation. I would say that as long as you can use your faculties, and there are different strands that can help you, that are prescribed by a doctor, that can help you with your physical ailment, illness, discomfort, pain, all of those kinds of things, then I think that's a totally different conversation. But recreational marijuana, for me, when I look at it, and I try to answer those questions, I can't come out to a conclusion where I can say it is good and helpful and wise for a Christian to smoke, just recreational marijuana to the glory of God. I can't do that. But I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are, so let me know down in the comments section. I'll interact with you there. If you liked this video, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, think about subscribing. And also, this Saturday, where's the Saturday? Whatever day the 15th is, I'm going to be dropping a new newsletter. And if you haven't signed up for that, there's a link in the description of this video. There's a video just waiting in that newsletter. Every newsletter has an exclusive video, and there's one waiting for you. If you just click on that link and sign up, you'll get one email a month for me, a little bit of background info on the channel, some helpful links, and that exclusive video. So I will see you on Monday for Theo Live. I hope you have a great weekend.